What's up, Samurai? We are back as more Trove, and this has been a long overdue video that I promised you guys, well, sometime last year. I was very clear that I wouldn't end up getting the video out sometime last year, but lo and behold, here we are. So I ended up doing a bunch of calculations of the total amount of dragon coins that you need, and I gotta give a shout out to my buddy Spooky Pants, who ended up doing a bunch of calculations of the average amount of dragon coins that you can get per day, both as free to play and from challenges and so on and so on and so forth. You're going to see firsthand just how bad these dragon coins are. We've known that they've been bad for a long time now, and if everything would go perfectly, this video would actually get the attention of the developers, and they would realize that they need to overhaul how dragon coins are obtained, or more realistically, they would just need to lower the amount of total dragon coins that are required to craft all of the dragons. None of that's going to happen. Of course not. But the biggest issue with Trove as a whole is they kind of have this philosophy of just add in more. You know, the chaos chest items are a prime example where they just keep stuffing more and more items in the chaos chest that ultimately end up equaling a staggering amount of chaos cores that are going to end up being required in total, including all of the other recipes and resources and stuff like that. This is, you know, this is a video that we could end up doing all to itself. But the point is that both dragons and chaos chest items just keep getting added and added and added to the game. And unfortunately, they don't balance out the previous items to equal to a very reasonable amount. And so unfortunately, it just keeps getting fatter and fatter without any reason or method of getting more dragon coins in this case. You know, granted, of course, you can end up pay to winning your way to getting the dragon coins, but yeah. So just to, you know, before we end up getting into the daily calculations of how many dragon coins you would end up being able to get, let's talk about the amount that you need. So based on, you know, all of these old school dragons, the dragon souls themselves, for the Azulian, you only have to craft 40 of the souls. So they give, you know, 10 each, which means that this dragon costs 400 dragon coins. And then you need 100 dragon souls of each of these, which cost 4 each, which means they are 400 dragon coins each. So in order to end up getting all of these dragons, it's going to cost you 2,800 dragon coins. Moving on to the eggs, the way that these dragons are gotten is usually from fragments or just crafting the dragon egg itself, which, you know, is gotten from various methods. You know, I could end up making another video talking about where you actually get all of the dragons, you know, because we could probably update that tutorial for you guys sometime this year. But today, that's not what we're focusing on. So the hatched dragons, that is going to end up costing 6,050 dragon coins, because this dragon costs 2 eggs that doesn't end up actually technically costing dragon coins. And then the battle dragon from the Bomber Royale, he only costs 50 dragon coins because the fragments or the egg and the fragments required for the egg are extremely time gated. Like, it's really, really bad. Actually, does the egg actually cost anything? Come to think of it, no, they don't. Okay, so it's just tokens and fragments and blah, blah, blah. So yeah, my calculations should be correct with that. So that's going to end up being the hatched eggs. Then there's the fragment dragons. Some of these are varying, like the block dragon is a little bit cheaper, so on and so forth, but you still need to end up actually having like all the eggs and all the fragments and crap like that. So these dragons are going to end up costing 8,200 in total. So that's fun. And then I also completely forgot about Luxian. So Luxian would be another 400 added onto the plate. But moving on, the Primordial Dragons, you need to get a Diamond Dragon Egg, which is already hard enough as it is because of the Diamond Dragonite. And then the dragons themselves, which each of these costs Diamond Dragonite. They cost 400 dragon coins each, except for the Cosmic Dragon, which costs 600 dragon coins and 5,000 crystalline cores. I legitimately would like to slap whichever developer decided that this was a good crafting recipe for a 10% increase in damage. Like, it's basically what these dragons do is they give you 10% more to whatever elemental dragon they are appropriate. you basically get a 10% boost to each of the different elemental types. So the Cosmic Dragon gives a 10% boost to all your Cosmic Gems, Fire Dragon to all your Fire Gems, so on and so forth. But you can see that the boost is very minimal and ultimately is going to end up being the same boost all of these dragons do, but for whatever reason, they just made this dragon extremely expensive. And it pisses me off, and now is the best time to talk about this dragon and how much of a failure it is, because I don't know why, like, they basically put a really high value on this dragon because the devs themselves were too lazy to add this dragon, and so it took a really long time to add it. And so because of that, their mentality is, well, it's the final primordial dragon. It should be super valuable and super rare. And it's like, no, it's not, you idiot. It should be the same price as all of these other dragons. Just because the devs took too long to add it into the game does not necessarily equate it being valuable. Anyways, Primordial Dragons is another 1,800 dragons just because of that. This is seasonal titles, so that doesn't matter. But you want to know how many total dragon coins you're going to end up needing? You need 19,250 dragon coins, if I ended up calculating that correctly, to craft every single dragon in this godforsaken game. Yeah, that's bad. That's really, really bad. So let me get this image ready that Spooky ended up making so that I can show you guys this. So I just screen captured his Discord message. Basically, he's saying, all right, I was bored, so I did some math for the Trove Dragons. So this is daily, weekly, and weekly plus tomes. This is very, very over exaggerated and based on having the Dragon Coin tome digest, the Dragon Horde Disposition Tome, which is at Mastery rank 100, 5 daily coins for doing the challenge, 1 guarantee for doing the Bronze Tier challenge, 2 possible from Lesser Dragon Cash, Silver, and Gold Tier. Friday is also ×2, so we can calculate this for an 8-day week because it would be double the amount. And so this is being extremely generous, and you would be able to get 192 daily, 1,536 weekly, and then plus the tomes would be 1.576 thousand, whatever. So this is just tomes and challenges. There's also the dragon eggs that you can loot, collect, or buying dragon coins from the shop for cubits. This is if you don't get any from the dragon cash though. So this would end up being, I guess, if you don't get any from the dragon cash, you can see those numbers start to dissipate quite a bit. And then if you end up getting some from the one from the dragon cash, you can see the numbers go up a little bit. So this is also implying that the player will even be able to get all 3 tiers of the challenge, have both tomes, log in around the time that the dragon coin challenge shows up 12 times a day. So that is already insanely impossible to do. So for those of you that don't know, the way that dragon challenges work is they just randomly will show up on the hour throughout the day, mixed with rampage challenges and so on and so forth. So it's very random, and unfortunately nobody has that amount of time to log in and grind dragon coins. So this is going to end up being his more realistic version, which is being online for 2 of the daily challenges and getting 1 coin from the lesser dragon cash. You can suddenly see that this starts to plummet down like crazy, and then this ends up being the most realistic amount of dragon coins that you would be able to get per day, most of all as a free-to-play player, which is going to be 14 dragon coins daily, 112 weekly, and then plus tomes 152. That's insane. So again, that would not be taking into account the fact that you could be spending your cubits to buy dragon coins. Sure, that'll help. If we try to take that into calculation, would we calculate that with Patreon, or would we calculate it without? Which is why we're going to take the numbers just completely spacing on the fact that you can get dragon coins for cubits, as well as loot collecting the eggs, as Spooky said. So let's say that the average weekly is 150. And that's being generous, considering that most players won't log in to end up actually getting all of the daily challenges. So that would be 19,250 divided by 150 which would be 128 weeks. So 128 weeks into months would end up being 29 months. 29 months into years would be 2.4 blah, blah, blah years. So it would take you over 2.5 years in order to end up getting all of the dragon coins that would be required. Let's just say, for argument's sake, that you start spending all of your daily qubits on dragon coins, and further than that, you know, there's obviously going to end up being all the cash shop stuff, which we're not going to get into that. Let's just say generously that the amount of dragon coins you could get for qubits would knock that down to 2 years. Obviously, it would knock it down a little bit more than that. Maybe we would say 1.5 years if you're spending all of your qubits, which you would never want to actually do because there's far more valuable things you could be spending your qubits on. And that's also under the impression that you would have patron and that you would be grinding every single day. On top of that, again, there is the cash shop equivalent where you get a boost of dragon coins. Even if you ended up getting this 250 dragon coin boost for the entirety of it, all it would end up essentially doing by having any of the dragon coin boosts is it gives you ×2 the amount of dragon coins, which would mean that that would just cut the time down in half. So that would be, again, that would be around like 1.5 years. Now, let's just be super generous and say that with qubits and with these dragon coins, you would end up being able to get all of the dragons in 1 year. That's still under the impression that you would be logging in very regularly and spending absolutely everything that you ever owned on dragon coins. But if you end up going for the dragon cash, that suddenly becomes a huge deficit. Or deficit is not the right word. I'm sorry, I'm very tired. It's like 5 in the morning when I'm recording this. But yeah, essentially you'll be able to get a lot more dragon coins, but it would still be very, very expensive. Like, I don't know what the average amount of dragon coins you can end up getting out of a greater cache is. It's been a few years since I ended up opening these boxes, but I think it's safe to say that it is not going to end up being a very good equivalent and would probably be thousands of dollars if you wanted to pay to win all the way. Now, the other thing that's stupid is you can actually double down on the dragon coins, because if you get these double coin boosts, they will work towards the greater dragon cash, but it only goes up to a specific amount, as you can see. So it's still not like it's worth it, and it's not at the same time. It's just devs, like, you need to overhaul how dragon coins are earned, or you need to overhaul the crafting recipe for all of the dragons. Spending thousands of dollars or years worth of your time just to get all of these dragons is just not worth it. And at the end of the day, the real bottom line is, what do the dragons actually do for you? Well, in the long run, they end up giving you stats that make you really, really powerful, but you have to have like almost all of the dragons in order to end up seeing some sort of an impact in the first place. And even then, the most impact you're going to see is from the Primordial Dragons. I have nothing but bad things to say about the dragon coin system that is currently in the game. This has been a video that is long overdue, and most of all, again, I just wanted to show you guys the sheer bombardment of calculations that would end up going into how many dragon coins you would need that the devs clearly have never even thought about. Because if they thought about it, it would be something more reasonable. And the funny thing is that at the end of the day, I know, they're trying to end up getting as much money as possible out of, all the dragon coins and stuff like that. Okay, cool, fine, whatever. But doesn't it make more sense to make it something that's actually like approachable, that you could actually see, at the end of the tunnel? And that would end up making people more likely to purchase. Because the other thing too is you gotta consider there are so many other things that you can spend your money on in this game that are ultimately going to end up being more valuable. Like, let's not even bother criticizing the cash shop and how broken and bad it is, because there are so many things that the devs put a high value on in the cash shop that is just atrociously bad. Like, don't even get me started about these mystic reagents. These boxes are literally a waste of money because it's actually faster to grind the resources you get out of these boxes free to play. Yeah, that is equal to a lot of the different aspects of this game. Anyways, I love you guys, and I hope that you found this video mildly entertaining, or maybe it just pissed you off, in which case I'm sorry I left that vibe out there for you guys. But at the end of the day, yeah, I really wanted to have this as a video that would draw attention to how badly calculated the dragon coins are. Again, don't get me started about all the stuff in the cash shop being incorrectly calculated. Do not even get me started on the chaos cores. My biggest issue, again, I want to reiterate this because I remember when dragons were first added to the game, me and my brother were regularly playing Trove. And I distinctly remember, like very, very vividly, I remember going out for a drive with him. We were taking a break from playing games and stuff like that. We were going to get like McDonald's or something. And I remember we were talking about how the developers didn't seem to have the foresight of, they keep, like, basically the conversation went like this, where we were sitting there saying, like, they keep adding stuff to the chaos chest and they keep adding dragons to the game, but they don't even out the cost. So in a few years, if not months, that's going to become like a big, big problem unless they deal with it. And I could tell you guys, out of the years and years that I've been playing this game, they haven't dealt with it. They haven't changed it. They've actually changed a lot of the different mechanics in the game. Even chaos cores is not nearly as bad as it once was, just because chaos chests are easier to get than they used to be. But dragon's coins are one of the things that has been years and years and years needing to be overhauled. Anyways, now I'm just going in circles. Thanks for watching. Smash the like for more. Buy the merch you want to support the channel. That's not my shirt. That's a Gonda shirt. Have yourselves a wonderful day, ladies and gentlemen.